assuming that you're wrong, and I refer to this as a VUCA superpower. It's a superpower in this world that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I just want to talk briefly about that so I can give Mike a little bit more time, and then we can talk a little bit more about the two presentations that are short presentations here. First thing, this is kind of my statement of what I believe the world is from what I've seen, and it's kind of, if you don't agree with me on this one, it's probably not going to help the rest of my argument. So I want to kind of set the baseline for it. I believe that the world is fundamentally different from the world that we evolved to face as human beings. Our mental evolution happened over hundreds of thousands of years, and because of that, we evolved in a world that was much simpler than it is today. And because of that, our mental evolution was built for a simple world. So we are not hardwired for the world we live in today. And I think a lot of folks will probably agree with it. I think it's a fundamentally different world than the world that we evolved to face. But we also evolved this wonderful thing called the human brain, which can figure these things out. So what I'm saying is basically our intuition is built for a world that we're not in. So we kind of think about things a little bit more. It's counterintuitive. If your intuition is built on the physical world, it's built on the simple world, then your intuition is going to make decisions about the world, assuming that it's simple and easy and mechanical in nature. But we need, the world being different, we need different strategies to survive and thrive. I don't want to just survive. I mean, survival is great. I want to thrive. So how do we thrive in this world is really what I'm going to talk about. Here's another problem with the way our brains are hardwired. And this comes to us from behavioral economics, psychology, sociology, et cetera. We're programmed to confirm our existing beliefs. It's confirmation bias. It's one of the most insidious ones. We don't think of things scientifically. I'll talk about it in a little bit. Therefore, in order to ward off our confirmation bias, we need to remain humble. That's a tough thing. It's a tough thing for me. If you talk to anyone who knows me really well, they won't say that I'm a bastion of humility. At least that's the way it usually is. But I think it's really, really important. I know that my good friend Kyle Arate, who's been on the show, a lot of you know him because he posts a lot on LinkedIn. You've probably seen some of his stuff. He talks about this a lot too. Humility. And in fact, I think when Mike and I were talking about this, we talked about this concept of humility. It's just so important because we don't really know what's going on, and we don't want to just confirm what we believe. And if we assume that we're wrong about our perspective and the things that we see and believe about the world, then it's going to open us up to a world of possibilities. We're going to be open for criticism, which is one that I'm terrible with, by the way. Usually it takes me a while. My first initial knee-jerk reaction when somebody criticizes me is to put up a wall and say, wait a minute, I didn't, that's a human nature. But as I tell my wife all the time, John, I say, I do listen, even though my first reaction is probably not the most desirable. I try to be open to these things. And this leads to continuous, dare I say, relentless learning and adaptability, which is one of the things that is necessary in this VUCA world. We need to continue to evolve. I want you to think about the things we're facing today. Mike and I were talking before here about AI. Think about AI and all the changes it's going to do. We have to be able to be open to thinking about the world differently, to seeing the world differently, in order for us to survive and thrive in this world as employees, right? As managers, as leaders. Here's the other thing that's important to me, though. I think most people would find that science is a good thing. I think everything that we enjoy today was to a certain degree given to us through science, right? I mean, we look at germ theory and the ability. We just went through a pandemic, and God forbid if we didn't have some of the vaccines and other things. I know that's controversial, but if we didn't have those things, we can only imagine what happened because it happened 100 years ago during the Spanish flu. Science is generally a good thing. I'm not saying it's universally a good thing, but it's generally a good thing. And assuming you're wrong is more scientific. Why? Because scientists begin with a hypothesis. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but what we want to do is we want to say, here's what we think is going on. But the vast majority, and not the people here necessarily, but the people that we know, love, and work with, um, don't really get science, I think. This is just my general perception. They don't know that what a scientist does is not seek confirmation for their hypothesis. What they do is they create a null hypothesis, which is the opposite, and they try to prove the opposite. And when they can't prove, this is called falsifiability, when they can't prove it, then we say, wait a minute, this might be something that we should pay more attention to. This is something that's more credible. And as we continue to try to disprove things and we continue not being able to disprove things, then those things gain weight. These are most likely things that are quote unquote true. But that's not how most people, I think about science. I think they think, hey, I've got a hypothesis. Let me go find evidence for it. That's not how it works. And I'm not saying scientists themselves don't do this, by the way. The opposites of science and I did a short query on this with my friend ChatGPT just to confirm that some of these things that I'm thinking are correct. So I'm either ChatGPT and myself are incorrect, or I'm probably on the right track. The opposites of science are dogmatism, pseudoscience, which is proving what you want to be true, subjectivity, personal intuition, ignorance, or lack of inquiry. These are not necessarily good things, especially in this VUCA world we live in. And I'm sure that we've all seen people in leadership positions who might display some of those things. I've often said, I remember giving a talk many years ago for the Oakland PMI, they said, tell me 2 reasons why agile transformations fail. And I said, it's a lack of humility, both intellectual humility, I don't know everything, and intellectual curiosity. I want to know. I want to find out. And doing so really means that we sometimes have to admit we're wrong. So to wrap this up, because I'm looking at time, I want to make sure that I stay within the bounds. Assuming that we're wrong about something in the way we perceive the world, the way we think about the world, will lead us to put in place the feedback mechanisms that are necessary for us to navigate the VUCA world. If we look at agility, if we strip away the word agile, because that gives us problems sometimes, though I think most of us here probably understand what I would say by that. It's about feedback. If you look at something like Scrum as a framework and all the other frameworks, the reason that we would utilize them, and a lot of folks don't tell us this, unfortunately, they just say, do it or die. The reason we would utilize these frameworks is they are feedback mechanisms. When you look at Scrum, you have daily feedback mechanisms in the daily Scrum. You have regular feedback mechanisms through retrospective and review and refinement and planning. What this does is it reduces risk, because waterfall is generally risky because you've intentionally removed the feedback mechanism from the system by design. And waterfall works in a world that's simple, in a world that's maybe even complicated if we want to use Cynefin terms, but it certainly doesn't work as well in the VUCA world. So assuming we're wrong will lead us to trying to disprove or prove that we're wrong, either way you want to go. And you're going to have to put in place the things that are necessary to help understand, am I really wrong or not? So that's kind of my thesis and argument for the day.